Test.
Good morning. Today's February 19th, 2025. I'd like to call to order the Detroit Community Land Bank monthly Board of Directors meeting. We'll start with a roll call. Brian Barker. Here. Suzanne Spellin. Here. James Donnelly.
Here.
Andrew Cooper. Here. Brian Sano. Here. Margie Martino.
Here.
Monica Kuzieski.
Here.
James Mager here. And absent is Bob Conley, correct? And we also have in attendance Executive Director Brad Lewis, Project Manager Paul Donnelly, and Reverend Burke. We have minutes from 7.
Yes, we have minutes.
First order of business is to review the minutes from January 17th, 2025.
Make a motion?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh.
Monica. Review of our financials, P&L.
Would be me. As you've seen in my note, the bookkeeper's on paternity leave, so his coworkers jumped in and got our books taken care of, which was helpful for our audit because they wanted to see what we had lagging from last month, so to make sure that they get our payables, accounts payables correct for 2024, which the audit's going fine. There's only 4 outstanding items out of 40 that they need to wrap up, so we should be good for next month. One thing that our bookkeeper does every time our payroll goes in, he puts it in payroll liabilities and then he journalizes it to make an expense later. And I don't think his coworker caught that. So you'll see on the P&L that the payroll's half of what it should be for January. And Ryan, our traditional bookkeeper, will probably move it out of payroll liabilities, which is on the balance sheet. Page 3. Yep. 24,000 is the payroll liability there. So that'll be settled when he gets back. But otherwise, everything's looking really good financially. We closed on 3215 6th Avenue on the 7th of February, so it's not reflected in the income statement just yet. And we have probably about $50,000, maybe $60,000 worth of receivables for LBI expenses from this year so far. So that's not reflected on here because the total hasn't been totaled, but once we apply for that, we'll get it. And that's LBI 1 anyway.
Any questions? Brad, you want to move into your report?
Yeah. Paul, if you don't mind, I'll jump on the B section, then you can go to A.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll do B first because I just said it 3215 6th Avenue.
Yeah, that's fine.
Closed on the 7th. And immediately there was a permit in the window and a dumpster out front. So it's a really good sign that would be 2 pieces of housing, units of housing coming soon, I hope. 791 River Street, we had a contract last month. The buyer wanted to move in, then he didn't want to move in. And now that he doesn't want to move in, the restrictions are fine. But if he wanted to move in because of our enterprise funds and the ARPA funds and all the things, he would have to be income qualified. But now that he doesn't want to move in, he doesn't have to be income qualified. He just has to restrict the rents. So we're back on the negotiating table to make sure our restrictions are ironed out. Katie Kemp's with WOH. She and I are having a phone call at 3:00 to go over the other side's attorney's ideas.
Okay, LBI Phase 2, as the board is aware, we have 4 current projects that are in progress, in process, if you will. Those are 3229 6th Avenue, 3230 6th Avenue. Both of those are receiving brand new decks, second-story decks. The work there is practically complete. It should have been done and complete yesterday, but with the weather that we received, they just couldn't close it out. So I'm betting that by the end of the week, those 2 particular projects will be complete. Good news is at 3209 and 3211 7th Avenue, those projects are 100% complete. The only remaining parcel is a formality. Billy French from the city code department will be by there tomorrow morning to give final inspection to 3211. As 3209 has already been through that process. So just up to date, since we've been at this 7 months, we've cleared out 7 projects with 2 more remaining. So by the end of the month, it'll be all 9 projects that we started will be complete.
Great, awesome, great. Way to jump in.
Yeah, and
No worries.
a couple, situational stuff. 3209 and 3211 used to be a 6-unit building combined. And with the legacy project, it was pulled apart to be 2 separate parcels so that the legacy program could create 2 units out of the 3. So like somebody would live upstairs and have 2 floors in the first floor. That's how the design was done. And unfortunately, we all know it sort of stalled and the people looking for funding never actually applied for the funding. So we had to move forward with what we're doing now. What we're doing today with both the decks that you talked about and the two houses on 7th Avenue, because they're separate, they're 2. All of those, these items take the red X off the building, meaning that they're safe for firefighters to go inside, safe for people to work. So that was the point of doing the work, was to rebrand the building as something a little bit more investable. And so because it used to be combined, there's only 1 X on the 2 of them, and then there's 2 X's on the other one. So we'll be taking out 3 X's.
We'll be collecting 3 X's, hopefully with the fire department's cooperation by the end of the month.
That'd be nice. Yeah. Then of course we'll bring it to A&D to see what they want to do moving forward with keeping it banked for future development or unbank it for sale for development. But that's just the strategy behind that. We still have outstanding 32 Glen Avenue's foundation. He hasn't got to digging yet.
Glen Avenue Foundation is substantial below grade work, and the contractor is postponing a little bit, and I understand because the weather has been absolutely brutal. But he assures me that I think he was obtaining the building permit this past Monday, if he hasn't already, and then he'll begin work pretty quickly.
And all these non-roof projects have we had the design done in-house, so they were able to take the design to code, and we had code look it over before we had them bid it out, so that way code, if they had any comments, we could get our designers to fix the design before somebody would apply.
We don't want to see the contractor walk in, applying for a building permit and having problems from day one. We want that to have some synergy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to that point, LBI Phase 2 today, we put out the RFP for architectural plans for the properties that you all banked last time. And today we have walkthroughs with architects for the same point. If we can get architectural plans before we put out the bid for a developer to give us a price to completely rehab something, then they at least have a guideline instead of the sort of arbitrary, we want a finished building. And they walk in and they're not sure what finishes we want or what layout we want, that sort of stuff. So we're trying to do the design phase ahead of time in under the bucket of money called pre-development. That's what LBI gives us.
And there'll be 3 walkthroughs today on these properties with the architects who are planning on submitting a bid to us. So we'll update you as soon as we get through that process.
And I think you guys would award it on the next meeting, March 19th. So that's it for my report.
Moving on, we had an A&D committee meeting last Monday, and the following came up as recommendations to the board. The first will be the flow chart we put on our website or the internet. It should be all the way in the back of the packet.
Looks like this. We'll share.
So Brad had this done a little over a month ago, and I think we all reviewed it, made some changes, and Brad, would I be correct saying this is our final draft, right?
Yeah,
The
unless
final
unless
product.
somebody from the board today would say that, this is confusing or doesn't make sense. But when I started, it was hard for me to understand the process for dispositions. And although our bylaws spell out exactly how to dispose of property or what needs to happen, it doesn't clearly communicate it to the people applying. So when they call or ask, how do I buy a building? We have a 13-page application, which is good. But then we also have addendums that put it up to 39 if it's an unfinished building. And that's sort of the enforcement. Like if they don't fix it, there's the finishes that we expect if they're fixing it. But if they're buying a finished home, they don't need to pick out finishes. So they don't need that addendum. So different documents are needed, whether you're fixing it or you're buying a finished product. So, or a side lot. A side lot, you don't have to have there's nothing to do to fix the side lot except for just join it to your current property.
Under vacant lot,
Mhm.
there's the level of finishes guideline. Is that for the vacant lot itself or for the potential development?
Potential development, right?
So we indicate what kind of finishes are required.
Yes, we have maybe a 6-page document or 7-page document that describes like how big our rooms need to be and what kind of finishes on each room, like whether the surfaces for the floors and that sort of stuff. Maybe there's a guideline for a tub. I was given the document. It was a policy that was created long ago.
I feel bad because I'm actually gonna, and I did not create that document. I'm just gonna say that. I'm not like going back on my own word, but I guess my question is why wouldn't we just defer to the city building code? Because the city building code is gonna identify all of that and it's gonna have to be reviewed by the permit anyway.
That's a great question. I don't have the answer.
Because if the
As to
city
the-
changes their code and their code is stricter or looser than ours, I wouldn't want to impede progress or have to create another headache for a potential developer,
Mm.
right? Like the goal is to be more friendly,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Versus more
Less hoops.
Yeah.
Less hoops.
right. So if all of a sudden they have to match our guidelines and then turn around and match the building code guidelines,
And they're incongruous.
God forbid we ever get a historic district, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, then you got those districts, you know what I mean? Like, it's just layers upon layers upon layers. National, we follow New York State Building Code and National Building Code, Fire Code, I think. That should suffice, I would say.
I don't know where it came from, but we've had people finish properties they were code compliant,
But they were bad.
but they were not good. So,
I think
I don't know if that's where that came from, but that might be the
I think so.
background.
I think we borrowed it from the HCR guidelines for affordable housing. I don't think the building code gets into what this is getting into.
Okay,
Well, I was gonna say, did you, when you
So
were
is that
reviewing
like
this,
laminate
just
versus
curious, did
carpet
you
kind of
go
thing?
through
Yeah,
that
just
like
durable
6-page?
finishes, you know,
Did you,
certain level of
did you,
finishes, so it's not just
when you
like-
were reviewing this, like notice anything just from like, that stood out, that seemed like it was a little contradictory to code or maybe?
so that's a different story. So if it's not size of rooms and, I mean,
No, then I think,
I
you're
know Brad
also,
mentioned like a tub, I mean, I know.
right, if it's level of finishes versus code,
Specs out.
right?
Well, the point of a tub is if somebody puts in a shower, then kids can't live there, and it makes it less family friendly. But a code will allow a shower.
Well, that's why I use that as an
Yeah,
example, is like, is there things in there that do go above the code kind of to that point to make sure that it satisfies some of the other mission of the
Yeah,
land
Now
bank?
that, now that Brian, you guys clarified that, then I'm good. Because the aside from affordability, we're also talking quality, right? We're also trying to change the quality of housing, which should reflect the affordability. Like it should ripple to create more affordability, because if people move into these houses, they'll vacate other houses that other people can occupy. So it should have a domino effect, without having to necessarily build all brand new houses.
one point to that is, and it's just off the cuff. sometimes I think developers take buildings and they tear them apart to rebuild them. Meanwhile, they could spend that same effort somewhere down the street. But some of the price tags for our legacy development from the developers were $700,000 to redo a building, and then they still needed money from the government to do it. And one of the projects I think we'll be able to redo for like 200,000. I don't know what the bids will come back at, but you could go there right now and plug something in the wall and it would work. Like you charge your phone. So the electric all works and everything works, but they're going to just tear the whole thing apart. Some of these level of finishes address like how they rebuild that stuff. But if it's existing conditions, then I wouldn't think that you would need them to tear it apart. So just saying, sometimes the grant funding incentivizes people to deconstruct a building that could work.
Really?
Yeah.
Surprise.
I can send out the level of finishes after the board meeting today, and then we can look over them. But this is just what I got from my emails that were back and forth of like, what do the buyers need to provide us, and what do we need to make them sign? And that's what we ended up with. But of course, if we want to have different opinions on the level of finishes guidelines, we can totally address that later. But this is just an existing policy, so.
And then, I mean, there's two questions there about this level of finishes item, which is, is there going to be a conversation about getting rid of that versus are we going to look at what's there and do, are those, are we all okay with whatever it says? Because if there's still going to be level of finishes, then this part of this flow chart isn't going to change.
Right.
It's gonna say there's
Right.
going to be
Yeah.
levels of finishes.
Yeah.
What those might be could change, but
Yeah.
So
No,
I don't
I
know.
would-
This
yeah.
particularly needs to just to sort of refocus
Mhm.
back where we started.
Yeah.
No, I
I don't know
think
if this
we need
needs to
it.
change,
I
yeah.
think because people need to understand that we have an expectation.
Right. Exactly.
Expectation of quality. So then,
If anything, it's a possible look at and tweak in a plus add, whatever.
Yeah.
well, no, I mean, even if it doesn't reflect building code within the in the actual language, you could even put that in and then do the base finishes, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, we probably should. If it isn't in there, there should be something about like, of course, code takes precedence.
Great.
Like,
Mhm.
I don't know.
It always does.
I'm sure it probably is in there already, and it certainly.
In the
should be obvious,
RFPs that
but-
we've written for the work that we put out and completed, yes, code supersedes. However, as the project manager, I may insist upon a few things that go a little touch above and beyond code.
Yeah.
And that's my prerogative, and I've explained that in detail in the request for proposal outreach, as well as with individual contractors on site. So, and it's, oversight is really important here. It's too easy to cheat. It's just too easy.
I think we
Brandon,
we
need
well
a
know that.
motion. We need a motion to
Yes.
adopt this. Yes, correct.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adopt publishing on our website of this flow chart?
Or adopt the flow chart itself.
I'm sorry.
You could just adopt the flow chart itself.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the flow chart?
Second.
Yeah. Who's-
Brian,
Brian.
motion. I think that was I can.
Yes.
All in favor?
Uh-huh.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're gonna move on to 17 Park Ave, to either sell or to go into a contract with our real estate agent. We did have an offer. We discussed it at A&D. In the interim, the purchaser has upped his price. I'll let Brad explain a little bit more, where we're at there. And then we can move into whether we sell or list or leave.
Yeah, so, right, A&D had concluded at the end of the meeting that the initial offer of $25,000 was low, but the story of this individual is that he wants to fix it and flip it with the restrictions to remain in effect. His goal is to sell it to an owner-occupied person. If he can't find an owner-occupied person, then he would rent it out at affordable rates and still have the restrictions. So after he fixes the building, he would then like to fulfill one of the two mandates, get an owner-occupied person in, which I think is great. And then if not, he would like to rent it out. So the A&D committee thought that $25,000 was low. They wanted to still proceed or move it forward, but at the same time, the price being contingent on, you guys' decisions, or at least, a negotiation between a subcommittee or that sort of thing. But because of the conversations in A&D, he wanted to get an engineer. He's really concerned about one of the foundation walls. We replaced the other one in 2022, I believe. So we replaced the west side, and the east side is the one that he's concerned with. And I told him that, I think you're moving forward, but at the same time they want to renegotiate the price. They want to see a higher amount. And then I told him on the phone that he said to me, 45,000 if the engineer's report is good is something he could do. So he said tell him that tomorrow at the meeting. Called me yesterday. So sort of where we're at.
What kind of shape is the house in otherwise?
We were there, and I sent pictures in a Google Drive to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We
Oh.
recommended, Andy,
Well-
55 or 65?
65.
Where were we at?
We listed it for 65, but when we went just to look at it,
Yeah.
I said it's a $30,000 house. So
So
I think 45 is a good price.
Okay.
Can I ask who the buyer is?
Yeah. His name is Joshua Berkowitz, and his company is JP and MG Estates. And we went to Code to check out their history. They have 2 families in the city right now, and largely any of the complaints that they found were like DSS inspections or Section 8 inspections. And they were all closed and fixed, meaning that somebody had an issue or they did an inspection, found something, and they fixed it. So we talked to the code inspector that was, largely on the case, and that person responded that the guy's got a quality property manager that takes care of all the issues as they come up.
No
So
negatives.
That was the name of it's JP and M.
JP and MG
There's
Estates.
another property owner that's name is close to that. That's not good. That's why it's like,
Yeah.
wait a second.
So, so here's even when I was at the city, here's my concern. If code enforcement knows the individual, I mean, your goal in life should not be known to code enforcement. Like, you should
Very
really
true.
not, know who your code enforcement officers are. This used to be part of the challenge in the foreclosure properties, is code would be a part of that, and nothing against code, they were just reporting out, right? And it was for the committee and our committees to take into consideration. But if you have somebody who is consistently called and fixes a problem upon a call versus being proactive and not having a call
Exactly.
and not having issues, and granted, on
Yeah,
benefit of
you
the
want to
doubt.
hear them go, I don't know that.
Correct,
person."
right.
That's what you
Benefit of
want.
the doubt, because sometimes tenants, and having worked in multifamily, tenants are squirrely, like I get that
No.
too. But I think it's something to consider, right? Like,
Yeah, I'd like to know
100%.
how long have they been in business? If this is a new company and they bought some properties, and then the first 2 years they're getting tenants and fixing problems, that doesn't seem as bad as, well, they've been doing this for 10 years and they're still getting calls and they're still for the same kind of stuff. And
well, those routine, I mean, those inspections are pretty routine.
Right.
Yes,
That was what I was going to say is the reason for the DSS inspection is every time a new tenant
right,
moves
no,
in,
yeah.
DSS has to go check out the place.
Yeah.
So it's
And annually.
So the inspection.
Katie, I have a question.
Yeah, and
I mean, it could be something very minor.
well, it's the DSS, like they're saying, it's triggered no matter what. But yeah, what were like the issues that maybe come up? Was it
I saw an outlet
okay?
or like a
Okay, so that's-
not working smoke detector.
All right, so that's small stuff.
Yeah.
I
Do you recall anything else?
just so
No,
this
no, it was
isn't
minor,
held
and,
up
and,
too
and
much.
just to fill everybody in, code downplayed these guys is, we don't have any issues. That's the way they really presented it, and summed up.
Katie, I got a question for you. We have 2
Michelle.
resolutions. Oh, this is Michelle.
Yeah, Katie is
I'm
the.
sorry. Michelle,
That's fine.
we have 2 resolutions here
Yes.
on the table for 417 Park Ave.
Yes.
Could we adopt both, changing the verbiage of the first one to accept this offer, 45,000? But if it falls through, in the essence of time, allow Brad to execute with me.
Yes.
For,
Yeah.
so would no
Have
matter,
The listing be contingent on.
yes, no
the
matter,
sale.
whatever the reason is that 17 Park falls through,
Even-
whether we explore with code and they are a bad landlord,
Yep.
whether the west wall is bad, whatever it is, doesn't work, Brad is calling it this way.
Yep.
So you're saying it would be contingent on one, the potential buyers engineering report, and
Anything.
two, a deeper conversation with code enforcement? Is that what you're?
Whatever, the deal could fall apart for whatever
The
reason.
deal
But
falls apart.
So that we don't have to
Permission
come
I
back
don't
here
wanna
next
wait till
month
next
and-
month
yeah,
to
exactly.
listen with Leah. I want,
Okay.
if this falls through next week, he calls Leah and
Okay.
puts it on the market.
I just wanted, what's the exact, are we, because that's a pretty broad, what fall, just any reason it falls.
Any reason it falls
Yeah.
through, we can get out of the contract and list it, because we don't have a second offer on the table.
Well, and truth be told, the buyer might back out too.
Yeah, that's what I mean, if we keep asking him questions, he might say, you know what, I'm done with you guys.
Okay.
And if we
So
don't
you're
want to
giving us a
wait,
little breathing room if for some reason it's like, hey, by the way, like when after
Yeah.
this I go talk to code again about
Yeah.
it, and they're like, actually, blah, blah,
We
blah.
didn't want to say.
Yeah.
that could be a phone call you make to Brad, and then Brad can,
Okay.
he can work the buyer,
Mhm.
then one of them can call Leah and say, listen, put it on the market.
You spread, this person owns 4
Yeah.
properties throughout the city?
Yeah, right.
And
I'm
were
sorry,
they, were they
yeah.
flipped, the ones that he owns?
I'm not sure
We don't know.
how
We
he
don't-
got
We
them
don't
or
know
what.
the quality of.
But I mean,
flip.
you guys can, for the essence of the resolution, you can adopt the purchase agreement at 45,000. You don't have to put it contingent on anything. He's the one that is going to either sign the contract or not, and he's going to sign it contingent on his
Yes,
engineer's
on
report.
his inspection.
So he's going to do the report. We can approve the sale at 45 if that's what you guys want to do, and we're not going to sign the contract until he agrees to those things, and he's not going to do it until he gets an engineer report. So you can also, in the meantime, give me homework, if you would like, or maybe a gatekeeper, maybe Seamus can call code and see what's going on, and we can get the okay from Seamus to move forward from that arena.
I would also call the police department too.
Well, that's
because
what I was gonna, yeah.
that section of 4th Street in years past has been kind of notorious for some challenges, so I would just love to see if part of that was that.
331 4th Street.
And so, you can adopt the resolution, but at the same time, put in the contingency that we get the clearance from Seamus and, or anybody else, obviously you can talk to these department heads very
We
quickly.
basically can say if the contingencies aren't met, which he has his and we also have ours.
Mhm.
If they're not met and the contract gets canceled, we can put it back on the market without
Mhm.
having to leave.
I think that's the best way to go, but that's a good idea.
So I'd like to make a recommendation for A and D too, is maybe we develop, almost mirror like foreclosure process does, is, make sure that we're in addition to the
Doing
application
an
and
upfront
review, but then, checking in with code enforcement, checking in with police department, and
Does
then,
this person currently owe the city
Yeah,
taxes or
we
water?
went,
or
we went to the
garbage?
treasurer's
That's-
department.
You
and
did-
And that's on
do
the
that already?
application too, isn't
Okay,
it?
cool.
Isn't that reported on the application?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we
you still
went,
gotta
we
check.
went right
We
Yeah,
verified.
We sat down we just got to the treasurer's office. We just went there and provided this document. So these are the houses they own. Also did a search on the assessor's page to make sure that was the only properties that this JP and MG estates owned. And then we sat down with code and they went through everything. And then we went to treasurers and they went through everything. And there was no outstanding money owed or outstanding current violations.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes Sharon's info is better than codes. But, yeah.
right.
So just clarity on the engineering report, that's just a
his
sign off
thing.
that says that the west foundation wall
East.
east foundation wall is sound.
That's what he's looking for. So, but I think that's on him
Yeah.
because he's not going to sign the contract, so we don't need to do it
So it's
contingent.
not a request for us to.
We don't have to do it. No, he needs to send his engineer over.
But you know what, as a buyer.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah, just
And it also gives you an out.
is he
Yeah.
local?
No, I think he's in Westchester.
I know. You didn't make a noise, but I did.
You
But
have
as a local property manager.
Always got me in
That's what
trouble.
he's got.
Mhm.
And then
Like I
that.
said, code said his
They
property
usually would come
manager, they
together.
have him by name and he's reacted quickly.
You turned out all right.
Yeah, but you're a Trojan now.
So,
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution to enter into the sale of 17 Park, to also run concurrent with the resolution to enter into a contract with Leah, if in fact the sale contract falls through.
second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes. Motion passed, sorry,
So both resolutions on one.
yes,
Mhm.
per our attorney.
And then just clarity on what the next steps are. He obviously has to agree to the price and do his engineer's report. And you guys want me to do further investigation with both the police code and treasurer and assessors to make sure that they don't have any concerns at all. And if they do, we'll have to bring it back to the full board, right?
Also keep in consideration, if he continues to kick the can down the road about getting that engineer in there as
Mhm.
well, like, that's also,
It's one of the.
that's a way out, that's an out for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, and I can with code and police and stuff do it, and I'll just another check and then send a quick email out to the group if that
You want
helps.
this?
Yeah.
That's
What's
just, I
this?
have to.
Is the
Great, that
driver's
can be-
license in the backup or no?
No.
No.
But if
You know
it's-
who else might be a good check too?
Actually, I can keep this Badger thing.
Yeah, I got it.
Mr. Chacon.
Yeah.
Oh, for
Down on
stuff
Fourth
down on
Street,
Fourth
yeah.
Street?
Yeah, I'll check every code, our LPOs, because kind of the way we do that now, it could be, yeah, we'll just check everything.
Would Unity House be a good resource in case that's where, tenants are coming from in his,
Could be.
Right.
Could be.
to see, but I mean, how much do
I
they
think,
really?
I think Sam being the neighborhood
Sam knows every address,
leader,
that's a
and
problem.
especially
down
it's
there.
off of Ida, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's in his neighborhood. And,
That's how one
Josh
of these
and
ended
he has
up on
properties
it.
down there too.
Yeah, right, yeah.
They're usually pretty, knowledgeable about everything that's going on down there.
Yeah. I almost honestly, even myself, those couple blocks, I almost feel like I have it locked in my memory, the ones that are a problem. That's why I just did like a Google search. It doesn't seem like one of the ones that, I'm like, because those couple blocks are one of those
It's either-
halfies. They're
it's like
coming
the-
along or it's crap,
It's like
so.
the 300 block or the 400 block, and I can't remember. That's why I just
Yeah.
posed the question.
Yeah.
There was a challenge week there somewhere.
Mhm.
Our next order of business is 332 9th Street. We have a resolution to accept a gift from Trip. Brad, I believe we have a site visit
At 2 o'clock
today
today.
pending if
Approval.
we approve it. Yes.
I feel like previously when we've had resolutions, we make a motion and then have the discussion. Is that how we're supposed to do this
Yes.
all the time? So the resolution is to,
Michelle?
So,
So-
yes. Technically.
Robert's.
Doesn't matter, I just
Yeah,
wanna follow
you
protocol.
introduce it with the motion and then the second, and then discuss, and then vote
Mhm.
is the technical order, but there's
Come on, Chair.
legally no real
consequence for not doing
consequence
that.
of which way you do it.
I'd like to make a
Robert,
motion.
Robert is upset.
Robert. Just roll over.
Told you by mud.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution for 332 9th Street to accept a gift from Trip.
I'll second.
We'll have a,
Discussion.
It's a new bill?
no.
No, it's the one to the right of it.
Oh,
What, I know the Google's got it.
It's a brick building with a
Almost
beautiful
up.
cornice. You'll
So
love it.
what was Tripp's intentions with this building when they purchased it?
They've owned it for a long
to us.
They've owned it for a while, but right now it's vacant and they're up to $5,000 a year in vacant fees, and they don't have the finances to fix it. So they think it's a demolition. I don't necessarily from the outside see any like bowing walls or everything looks plumb and straight. So
So I guess my question is, they just did this monster project
Mhm.
over the last several years. A lot of it up in that area.
Surdy project. That's
Huh?
what they keep talking about. The building to the left of it's what they call a Surdy building, I guess.
Yeah, I guess my question is what prevented them from rehabbing that one in the whole project?
I think the grant funding is for new builds. Their dream would be for us to demolish it and then give it back to them so they can rebuild it. Which,
There we go.
We're doing
It's in
that.
the fine print.
well, no, they
No, he
they
bought
explicit. I've already emailed that to everybody, and when Kate heard that, she said, "Well, we can't do that." And when I talked to HCR, they thought that was a very odd thing that we would provide demolition services and give it back to a entity using the land bank to enrich another entity in the city. instead of operating as a government authority. So if the local strategy, and that's what you guys want to do, that would be up to you guys. But I told the trip that they have to give it to us without any asterisks or anything. And you guys as the board would decide what you want to do with the building.
Almost, I mean, just from Google, it looks like someone did some work on the top there and then just walked away. But it kind of, I mean, just from quick look, I know that doesn't always mean anything. It looks,
Right.
I can't imagine it's a,
Yeah,
Is
looks
the
good.
foundation
it looks
clear?
really good.
Or is it the
How much is it?
Well, and I'm going to be honest with you,
Hold on.
I told them that they could probably just list it for 20,000, but they want, 20 or 30,000. I said, we're under contract for 40, 45. You could probably sell it and then you guys make money. But I think they really were hoping that they could sort of make sure that whoever was in that neighborhood was somebody quality, and we have the enforcement mechanisms to make sure that it's not just going to go to squalor at this point. So they were just, I think they just want to be done with paying $5,000 a year to not do anything with the building.
Brad, if we accept this, if we adopt this resolution and we walk through it this afternoon, and the foundation walls are coming in,
Mhm.
are we binding taking a gift?
Well, at that point, if that was the case, then we have demolition money in LBI phase 2 that we don't have any demolitions geared up for. So
So we're essentially just taking a lot over then. Well, we'd have.
we would end up with a lot. Yeah. If we determine that, I've never been inside the building, but if we determine that this thing is very unsafe, there's no red X on it, but pretend there was, then we have the funding to deal with the problem, which is what we're kind of set up to do.
Okay.
So-
You either fix it or take it down.
we're saying we don't want to see what condition it is before we say you're willing to, either way it goes, you feel you're advocating for that.
You can
Yeah,
do
we
it.
have funding for
Demo
both
or-
ways.
We
How
can
much do
solve-
we have for demolitions?
We have like 125,000, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
When's the last time the land bank's done a demo?
Since 7 Park in 2023, I think, in August.
I mean, I guess the only thing is if it would be sad if it had to be demoed. It's a pretty nice looking building,
Yeah.
but I guess just justifying with the mission too, there has been a lot of work in that area, and right to the left of it's a complete rehab building. I mean,
It's a brand new.
it is nice to maximize in a block instead of spreading it out so that you can kind of make the most impact possible. Hopefully that doesn't happen. So.
I mean, to be fair, right, if, I know the city of Troy is a pro-housing community now, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's also one of those pieces too, where, if you're able to take it down, if it needed to come down, then we go out to a developer, Trip could be that developer, and then solicit a new construction to start infilling a block.
Mm.
Right, and it could be a single, a 1 or 2 family.
Looks like there's a.
Is
big
it,
one next
I was
to
just
it.
gonna say, because I know you have it pulled up, Mon, is there a
Yeah.
vacant, right, or, I wonder who owns that?
Well,
So,
I have a feeling that
Picture,
Trip just built in the middle of two
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
lots
that's
so
a
that they had
lot.
some grass on the side.
yeah.
So we'd get
Small
the,
lot.
No, I don't think we. I don't think
So
we
it
get the.
probably,
Yeah.
they probably bought a couple lots, merged them for this
Yeah.
project.
So
and
that's
built, so it
possibly
might be a
part of
side
it.
lot.
I don't
the
think
parcel
so.
you think it cuts off
I think
there.
it's right at the
It's-
building.
Would be the building.
They built in the middle of 2 lots.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming,
I think so.
because there's a vacant lot to the other side of it. too.
Just getting a gift. So
Oh,
we,
yeah,
we
there
can move
is.
forward with
That's a
solving their
buildable lot.
problem and solve
Yeah.
anybody's
Right.
problem.
But the one in between is,
No, but I mean, like
That's
if
not.
you,
that's not buildable.
It's a nice block, looking block.
So if it needs to be demoed, we demo it. If
Yeah.
it doesn't, we try and get it back out there to be,
We go to our LBI2 funds and we go
Yeah.
to restore it to the
Once we
point of
exhaust-
sale or sell it.
Once we exhaust our LBI2 funds, we can then apply for more funds, in which case we can take all our stabilized buildings that are banked for future development and apply to get funding to fix all those buildings to whatever level we want to. So
Yeah.
if we have to have some projects in the pipelines for grant awards, and if we don't have anything in the pipeline, then we don't have anything to apply for.
I like it.
And just to reiterate to Trip, of the understanding, it's not guaranteed that the building's going back to them.
Yeah.
If they're just an equal
I would put it
player
out,
like
Right.
everybody.
Yeah,
I would put it
Of
out to
course.
RFP and
Okay.
that's right.
have them submit as
Yeah.
part of it.
All in favor of adopting the resolution to accept a gift of 332 Ninth Street from Trip?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next order of business is I'd like to make a motion to pursue 3244 Sixth Ave and 3246 Sixth Ave from the city foreclosure list. We own the adjacent lots, correct?
According to
I'll
Robert,
second that.
you need a Robert in a second to open up.
Sorry, we can't even talk about it.
We're learning. We own the two lots next to it. This is an issue where I'm trying to iron out exactly what is our process for when the foreclosures come up. How do we as a land bank determine we want to buy them? The last two times the foreclosures come up, we've had as much notice as everybody else. Unfortunately, we had our acquisition and disposition next committee meeting was like a day or two before the applications had to be due. So if the process is this board is going to determine whether we buy or move forward or pursue something, then we'd need enough time in order to know that you guys see that as your mission. You know, that being said, these two lots, I know that the city is going to own them, and when they come up, I'd like to grab them because we own the other two lots next to them. So I'm just, yeah, we'd have 4 in a row, and then I've talked with the Charles Doyle a couple of times, and he thinks that he can negotiate with Habitat to put in an infill building there, similar to what we just saw on 9th Street, where there'd be some grass on either side, you know, and at least have some new construction.
I think this would be helpful. So, I mean, the list comes out, and when the list comes out, I know you're probably right on top of it, but if it would help possibly, you know, Sharon will schedule our property review committee, you know, kind of a couple weeks out to get us together. I mean, maybe that can trigger, maybe I can even have her send an email to you or something saying this episode. Now you know, like, okay, I have X amount of weeks. And obviously sitting on that committee, if it was, you know, hey, we have the option to hold stuff. We're being really big on not, you know, love the gardens and everything, but we're trying to get, if somebody wants a lot next door to them, or wherever, make them merge it together. Or, you know, we're kind of getting into not, you know, we held some landlocked that, you know, it's my sister and I want to do a garden for that stuff because there's not been success with that throughout the city. It just ends up being a nuisance, frankly. So, but maybe that way it could trigger at least an alarm to you to call an A&D committee meeting, or we could even talk before, just in case you don't get there. There's like, I really think we'd end up wanting this, and then you know, we could kind of hold it, or just, if that helps.
Yeah.
So I guess my question, because the application hasn't changed, right, for the foreclosure
I don't
process?
believe so, no.
So I guess my question is Charles is on to an idea. Do we know, just so that the committee who's reviewing the application has a little bit more substance other than maybe, right? Is there a way to get Christine in the room with Charles to see if and Carolyn, because usually Carolyn and CDBG works with Habitat to help offset some of their cost for construction. Is there a way to maybe pull them into the room with A&D, just have a conversation, just to make sure that when you fill out that application, we are working on a plan. You know what I mean? Like instead of just a hope and a prayer kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how quickly that could work, but.
Right. No, I did put an email out to Sharon and Randy. Randy's the planning commissioner, Sharon's the assessor. And they're going to get back to me in March. They're doing something this month that's taking a lot of their time. But in March, they wanted to sit down and discuss a strategy that gets us the list, or potential list, because people can redeem up into the time that it gets published. Or actually, they can redeem up into the time that it's decided at the property review committee. And I'm not even sure if they can redeem after that, but she was at least give us a list of things that we can consider that I can bring to A&D, you know, ahead of time.
Seamus, if these two parcels were just on the last foreclosure list, and nobody,
Were they on the list, Mike? I mean, my
One
mind is
was,
mush. I
the other
can't-
one is.
That was a whole 2
publishing
weeks ago.
Taylor's
I don't know what happened. You know?
my question is, if nobody bid on it and it wasn't awarded, can these discussions start now, or do we have to wait for another list to go back on?
I don't think you'd have to wait for another list, because at the end of the day, it's still foreclosed property. We've done a couple one-off property reviews because it just came up and it ended up being timely, and that we wanted to bring it to the council and say goodbye. So
The point of this is just so that when the list does come out, I can apply. for it.
Right, this motion is, I was talking
Mhm.
specific to these two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's not a need for us. I mean, if we owned it right now, then we could be treating the sidewalks with salt. We
Yeah.
could mow the lawn, those sort of things. But otherwise, this land bank doesn't need to own it. But eventually, when the projects come down the pipeline, we do need to assemble these 4 lots.
44 did not go to the list yet, correct?
46 in it.
46.
It's in the newspaper. Tamara has it.
was 3244 on the list? That's what
Yes.
I'm-
Yes, one of
that
them
list
was,
is
I
out
just
of
said.
right
32,
now.
40.
And we held it.
Well, I don't think you held it. I
Nobody
think
bid.
nobody bid on it.
Nobody bid on it.
I mean,
That's not nice.
So it'll roll over.
Yeah.
essentially.
It goes to the leftover list. That's why I was asking, do we have to wait? But if there's no time is of the essence to get it, then we'll just wait till the next list.
Yeah.
That's it.
mhm.
All right, so any other discussion on adopting resolution for the 268 parcels?
So the resolution to pursue means you can submit
An
an
application.
application, an offer.
Mhm.
How do we determine price?
I would assume you just go with what you guys offer every time. The last time you bought vacant lot from the
Okay.
city.
I don't know what that is, but
I
that sounds like a
mean,
good idea.
$100, something
Yeah, like-
that people offer. Sometimes
I mean-
if they really,
I mean,
aggressive,
if-
they offer
like,
Technically,
In
the
this
city could
instance-
actually just transfer
They
it to
could.
us.
They could, yeah.
You could go 0.
In
See if
this
they
instance,
transfer.
I sort of say like more value to these lots for us than some other random lot that
Right.
maybe we would develop.
Mhm.
So it would be, what if there was competition? I mean, you never know.
Well, nobody bid on it.
But
the
nobody been out
last
last
time,
time, yeah, right? So
The city has to
But-
pay school tax on all these lots that they
The,
own all their wages.
so they want to get rid of them too, yeah. So
But to your point there, but I mean, just to throw it out in the future, not that you'd put up thousands of dollars, and obviously, it's weighed in that the land bank has a mission and is, an
Right.
arm of the city and all that stuff, but you could have something that the land bank really did want at some point, and you could have a developer that also does want it, and they are gonna offer a couple $1,000
Yeah.
compared to 100. And that's when, if you have a developer that has a decent track record, that's when the land bank might not necessarily.
Well, right, we would
You know what I mean?
Understandable.
This is
And might not want to, I
different
mean-
situation, but
Yeah.
I'm just pointing it
But I
out.
think that's also the benefit of working with the city to develop a cohesive strategy with the land bank as one of its tools, right? And so that if there is a property, like say this one in that scenario you just said, that a developer also comes to the table, we can go back on, we develop the strategy because we know we're gonna get this out of the land bank, right? Because they've adopted policies, they've adopted finishes, they've adopted all these things. So they know that they're gonna be a good partner, not that every developer is bad, but at the same time, you have something to go back to and say, we already created a strategy, and it could, you could actually assemble those parcels for the land bank in order to make that mission move.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the law allows the city to do that, allows it
Oh.
to deal with the LDC and all of its associated authorities.
No, and I like the idea of a little bit of what I think Brad was saying is that although we might get some of these types of parcels that right in the moment are not valuable, are going to be put to use, if it's kind of part of a bigger plan, it does make sense for the land bank. And then the city gets the benefit of the upkeep and all that, and then, realizing a future plan that would be beneficial for that neighborhood or that block.
So in submitting an application, are there any limits to what you would offer? That's really what I'm getting to. Right?
Strategically,
Yeah.
you might right now adopt the amount of money you want to offer for it if that's what you want to do.
I don't know that we need to,
Okay.
but are we also saying that's within your judgment to make certainly we have our standard, you can't spend more than whatever. You're not gonna spend
Well, it's the
$1,000 on-
procurement, it's no different than
Right.
the procurement policy.
Yeah, right.
So as long as he
So
doesn't
that falls,
exceed that, right?
Yeah,
ultimately.
when it's been, I would probably just think, if in the last time we bought one, we spent a certain amount of money, is probably exactly what I would
Yeah.
assume we'd offer this time.
Do we not
And
have
that
an
works for me.
opportunity,
So I wanted to-
as we're talking about offers, do we not, you're talking about at least this one, it's a property that was on the list and no one bid on it, so
Mhm.
it's now this thing that the city's holding on to. Do we not have an ability or process in place to where the city can offer it up to say, hey, are you interested in this and why would we pay money for it? It can be gifted, correct?
Well, actually, to Brian, I was just as we were talking about, as I said earlier, that the developer that, I'm just in theory land, that the land bank offers 100 and someone offers 3,000. I mean, technically the land bank, I want to say, has first refusal on some of these properties, I believe.
I don't think it's
Um,
necessarily first refusal, it's just
We
The
can,
way-
You can offer.
we can offer it
Yes.
without really
Correct.
skipping through the
correct.
That's
property
why I-
review process. is
Mhm.
why,
It was,
yeah.
it was
That's why.
indicated that the city has the ability to do that,
Yeah.
but doesn't, it's not the city shall, right? Some communities, like Albany County literally gives all their properties to the land bank. Literally, there is no sale process,
Nope.
it just gets shifted, the money is generated.
She's saying no, they don't.
No, you're right. That's how it works in Albany. Like they just get a list and it's, here's the property.
And here's the
Yeah,
property.
Albany County literally
Deal
Just
just,
disposes of it.
and Albany County gives them money on top of it, you know, well, they used to, I don't know if they still do, but,
We don't want that.
no, so, well, like when we were starting out, we wanted it, but that didn't happen. But at the same time, you know, we knew when we formed the land bank here, the land bank was a tool that was necessary for the city to be able to try to address the housing issue. And it was more about the vacant building and the demolition issue, because at that point in time, the city didn't have funds available because we were still working through MAC and we were still working through those things. So it was seen as an ability, a two-pronged tool, right? Like there's a demolition avenue, and then there was this vacant building strategy working with the city strategy. So while the law was created that these entities, and it wasn't just specific to the land bank, the LDC is a part of that. You know, that's how Monument Square became owned by the LDC versus the city of Troy.
They almost have a similar first refusal.
Correct.
You
Right.
know what
And
I'm
it's
saying, but
right.
commercial
Yeah.
property, yeah.
so I mean, it's just it's not. I don't want. And I think the tenuous process of the vacant building and the foreclosure sale is delicate, right? Because the way I met Brad was because he didn't like that process and he felt that the land bank always got stuff awarded. But if there is a good developer out there, right, then it behooves us to invest in that small developer as well too, because we want people to be, and that's our mission too, right? Like in addition to the city, it's our mission too, is to empower people as well. So I think that it's not necessarily like what you're saying. It's closer to what you're saying, but it's nuanced.
It's that's, I
To
know I'm
keep the
saying,
community
yeah,
relations.
first refusal wasn't necessarily the right way to do it. I mean, if you go into the code and look through that the city has a certain amount of avenues to get rid of their surplus properties.
Yeah.
And one of them is the land bank, just like one of them's property review, just like sometimes we hire a real estate agent, just like the LDC can take commercial property. But I think since we're having this conversation, finding a way to, possibly sit down with the land bank a little preeminently we put stuff on a property review list. Do we want to think strategically of, quite frankly, there might be something on your radar or this board's radar that this would be a really good parcel to do X, Y, and Z. There could be something on our radar that it's not on your radar where we're like, this is why we'd like the land bank to take this. What do you think? So maybe we'll talk about strengthening that communication before we get to that, because if we start thinking more strategically, which you are all already doing it and already crushing, getting things done, it's a good opportunity to tighten up the communication where there might be an opportunity, before it does get even that far, if it could make sense.
I
on both ends.
like that thought. It's very proactive and it's the holistic list, right?
Mm.
But I'm also thinking in this scenario where you've got one property that was out there for the world to see and no offers were made, would it be beneficial for us to also talk through, a reactive process, which is like, hey, nobody moved on these. Is there anything? And at that point, it could be mutually beneficial for the city to say, hey, here you go. So one is proactive, holistic list with the possibility of some developer out there going like, hey, wait a second, but then the other one is, hey, this was out there for the world to see and no one was interested.
Yeah.
So therefore, do you want it? And it's not a bidding process, or it shouldn't be. I think it should be more of that gifting process to say this aligns with your strategy. Great, let's get this into the land bank's hands to start moving
Yeah,
on.
so like after sitting fallow, and then offer it to us, and we've done a site visit or whatever, we can either yay or nay it, but as a default, I like that.
Yeah,
point,
for
Brian.
this particular, we already know we want this, right? I don't think this
It's
last,
just opened up a convo. And
I don't think
Right.
that this last list was the first time 3244 was on there.
I don't think so.
Yeah, this has been passed up multiple times, right? That's why I'm saying, to Brian's point, again, let's move through the meeting, but I think a discussion should be had with us where, how do we get this, if something doesn't get taken or no bids, especially if no bids, how do you as the city transfer those?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great conversation, and just to lasting that point, that's a great example to that. The reactive part of it, because of, only being through, several of these property review committees, but I'm sure what happens, and even in my time here so far, that parcel that keeps getting, it's just like, yeah, no, nothing. We're just gonna keep rolling it over and rolling it over. So might as well get it, yeah, okay.
So no, nothing else? All in favor of adopting, resolution to pursue 3244 6th Ave and 3246 6th Ave. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to the next resolution. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution to pursue in the open market 84 Ida Street. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Anybody want to know about 84 Ida Street?
Yeah, what do you got?
So.
Straight around the corner from 4th Street, we were just talking about.
So Mr.
Sam Chapone
Chapone reached out to us,
The Shadow Land Bank.
and this is, he owns 3 or 4 on the 80 block of Ida. A few years ago, someone bought this property, started some rehab, then they ghosted, disappeared. It went on private market. The day that he reached out to us, it went pending. So I sent him an email, had a phone call with him, let him know that it's pending, but we will pursue it if the deal falls through. Ironically, 2 days later, the deal falls through. So we call him up, we let him know. Brad does a site visit. We spoke about it at A&D committee. We have also done, the land bank has previously done projects in and around the Ida Street neighborhood. 3 that Sam remembered most recently.
There's even 4 probably. I mean, I think 103 Ferry Street, 48.
103 Ferry Street, I keep forgetting.
There's one on Adams, maybe 123
Yeah,
Adams, and
yeah.
then there was a building that we tore down on 5th Avenue, and actually he bought the side lot and merged it with his property. So,
One of the first projects we ever did was on Ida,
yeah.
remember?
I do.
I like Ida, it's right on the canal, it's so pretty.
It was actually right next to, the restaurant, Kerman's.
Oh,
Like a couple doors down from
Yeah,
Kerman's.
around the corner.
This was so good.
So I guess this is because it's outside of our target area.
It's not necessarily, because early on it was identified as a secondary area.
I just mean our primary focus right now is North Central. I mean, I think the whole city should be our target area, quite honestly, but where we're seem to be, our sandbox seems to be North Central right now, but North Troy and South Troy should all be in the land bank's target area.
So
We
can
should
I
almost mimic the CDBG area, but
just
Yeah, please.
add on this one? There's a couple things. We do have the LBI2 grant that allows us to acquire buildings, and we also we have a bucket of funding for acquisitions and a bucket of funding for demolitions, and we have funding for that we're probably going to really use up for rehabilitation and stabilization. That funding we're definitely going to use up. Again, back to the 9th Street thing, is we could acquire this building using grant funding, stabilize it, board it up. Right now there's sleeping bags inside there, so squatters are going in.
chair, a huge problem.
Yeah, and there's trash all around.
This
and
one, Ida.
I did, right. And they demolished the chimneys and stacked all the bricks in the yard, and there's just trash all over the place. There was a sheet of ice to get into the building when we went to look at it. So we are going to need to be thinking in the future about what our projects are for the next round of funding for LBI phase 2. But in the meantime, we can prevent, potentially if a red X goes on that building, if somebody's inside and there's a fire, it could prevent somebody from dying because we could board it up and keep people out. There's a part of that mission too, that we can keep the grass cut and we can keep the trash cleaned up.
It's been a terrible nuisance for our community. It's been a constant there. Like LPOs, they're cleaning up. It's been terrible. And they're
Is it
dangerous.
weather sound roof?
Yeah, there was no leaks inside when we went inside.
Foundation's good.
Foundation's all right.
It's a shell.
It's just a shell. Yeah, they're just 2x4 studs. And they didn't pull out plans, architectural plans. They just did the room design and then built to that. There's no second floor stairs, so you can't go from the first floor to the second floor. I had to use a ladder and get up there to check it out. When I went up there, it smelled like gas, but the gas is off. So it was just one of those, like, I
It'd
think
be a great project for the first time.
When it was pending, what was it listed for?
80,000.
Way too
Outside
high.
the sun.
That's part of the question.
That's why it was
Shell.
that pending went off a day later. Yeah.
Well, you have to understand too that vacant building fees aren't paid on buildings that are listed for sale. So you're
It's a
exempt.
tactic, yeah.
It's a tactic, right? And so there's two things. One, investigating the idea of using LBI funds to acquire on the open market. That's a strategy I would like to at least try to figure out. To get it, once you've done it once, then you know that it can be done again. The second thing, I don't think we should be spending $80,000 or anywhere near that for a building that's in that condition. But to sort of tell this individual, we'll pay the city back the $7,500 in taxes you owe right now. We'll take it over and we'll maybe give you like less than half of that. That would be something maybe we can make them separate from the building and allow us to take over and stabilize the building.
So, okay, so this is acquiring this, we're not acquiring it from the city.
No.
No,
This is
Open
just,
market.
this
Open
is
market.
MLS listing, right?
Okay, okay. So you're just talking about putting an offer out there.
Yes.
Well, yeah, allowing that offer to come, yeah. Of course, the resolution's drawn in a way where we would approve the final number at the next board meeting if there's terms that we come to. So I would need to, you guys would have to say you want me to pursue it and then give me sort of a number that you don't want me to spend more than it and communicate that back to the owner.
And we might not want to do that in a public forum.
40? That's too high.
That's way high.
I've been there twice.
Which satisfying all his back debt. Did you still got?
Can we do an executive session immediately following,
Mhm.
doing that number, talk about that number? Okay, so you can table it till then, or you can fill in the blank after the executive session. What's the strategy that we can use?
We could come up with the number in executive session, then we'll just
So-
write it in after.
Okay, so you can
And it
adopt
is
it.
We can move it forward now and.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe it's a good time for code to go over there.
That's what I was also wondering, is like, how much heat has there been?
He had to code court at February 6th. He had to go to court for this. So the more pressure he has, the more likely he is to
Yeah,
accept.
we've been on, and again, Sammy Chapone. We were, because it's been it's been even more just outside the litter. There's a lot of activity there
Mhm.
constantly. That's very unsafe in so many ways. So we've been on it, but that's why it's you guys, us taking it. If we could get ownership of it and secure it better.
Takes 3 years.
Yeah, it's it would be tremendous.
So we're gonna
So we
table
go
that
from
for
the table,
executive
or-
session.
Well, you could call to a vote and fill in later. Is that right?
That's what.
Yeah. Yeah, you can pursue it and then we can go into
Discuss
executive.
price. in
Yeah, to
executive session.
executive session for price discussions.
So all in favor of pursuing 84 Ida Street in the open market?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving into the last resolution. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution for the land bank to not pursue a piece of vacant land at Robbins Ave and Lincoln Ave in South Troy.
I'll second. I gotta go though, so I was like, can I second and then leave?
Second and out.
Sorry about that.
So if I might, this is a larger discussion
Thanks. You too.
since probably 2023, maybe 2022. I personally have been interested in landlocked portion that's right here. I would like to see it
Yeah, I want to see this.
because I own the land right here and you can't get to it, but I want it for the future. Yeah. No, there's two lands. But now that I'm employed by the land bank, I don't know the conflict of interest policy or the strategy or any of that sort of thing.
I thought that was answered by
Right,
by
Phil-
Court of Counsel.
Rick Morrissey said that if this land bank said that they didn't want these vacant lands, these forests, so to speak, then it can go before the law committee and follow the same strategy that let's say the deputy mayor or the comptroller, anybody that would like it, that's in at the executive
That was
level.
maybe a waiver or something, I think.
Yeah, you'd have to disclaim interest here and then then I would apply when it's on the list. Right now there is no list, so this isn't like an important thing for me, and it's not that serious of a thing. It's been nobody's bid on these properties for years, so I don't think it's going anywhere. But it opens the bigger question: is what does employees or board members for this land bank do if they want to pursue on the foreclosure list, or are they completely disqualified from doing it? And so that's from the city's perspective, the land bank would have to disclaim the interest in the property. And then once they disclaim the interest, the employee, in this case me, or Paul, or any board member that's interested in the projects or properties, would then apply like normal, then have to go before the law committee, which is the city council. So the city council has to call a law committee meeting to allow that to happen. So that would be the process if there's no conflict of interest policy that disallows land bank employees and board members from pursuing them. So I was hoping to have a larger discussion of that at some point, and we got Michelle to also weigh in on it.
So as part of kind of coming on with you guys, we are looking at your current conflict of interest policy. So the conflicts policy, though, from a governance perspective, really deals more so with interactions between the board and staff and the land bank. It doesn't necessarily cover a situation like this where it is a property that, could potentially go to the land bank or a private citizen who happens to be involved with the land bank. So this would be more of kind of our own internal policy that we would create for these types of issues, kind of somewhat informed by, it sounds like the city already has a process for this themselves.
So, but as an independent authority, so to speak, and Brad as our public officer and New York State ethics, because we have to adhere to New York State ethics policy as well too. So by the process that he just laid out, does that prevent an issue on the New York State ethics piece of it, right? We've acknowledged that we have no interest in it because he was a developer before and he owns the parcel of land before. It wasn't due to the nature of his position that he's financially benefiting, right? So he was doing this before, he owns the lot adjacent, and it was not just solely because he is the executive director of the land bank as to why he would benefit from this.
Right.
Because that's the other piece of this too, is that it's not only just the city level ethics, it's the public officer aspect to the state. Because I go through it like every day. That's why my husband hates when I get on these boards. I just want to make sure that piece,
Yes.
right?
It kind of handles all the different verticals here. We've got the varying levels of
And sometimes it's not necessary. It could be, and this is something for us as a board to consider. It can be legal, but it can be a bad optic. And a bad optic is just as bad as a not legal.
And that's what Rick said the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's just in how we handle it and the optics of it. Yeah.
So it sounds like too, though, so obviously the city has a process, but we don't have a process as the land bank in our bylaws right now
not
that actually
right now.
really talk about an actual officer of the land bank engaging in a potential sale.
There's
It's more about
certainly
typical conflicts of interest
right.
that
So there's certainly procedures for if a board member, obviously you all have jobs and businesses and things outside of the land bank. If you were to enter into a transaction with the land bank for something, there's a process for that. There isn't really a process for when the land bank and a board member or staff are, call it necessarily competing for the same thing. There isn't really a process for that necessarily. So that would be something that, we could develop internally, just to say, going forward, here's our position and how we would handle these.
It's almost, it kind of straddles a couple policies, right?
Yeah.
Acquisition and
Right.
disposition as well as
Conflicts.
the conflict, right? It's not necessarily a conflict of interest, it's
Right.
laying out a process.
Yep.
I think it's definitely important that we do that, seeing that several of us in the room are maybe not full-time or at least part-time investors and developers. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we can work on that. That's probably something I'll tackle with our real estate team too.
Thank you.
So that's not something we have to pass then, correct? You're just we'll table that discussion
Well,
for a later date?
You can pass the resolution as it relates to not pursuing, but we'll kind of table the broader
Discussion.
adoption of a policy.
Yeah,
So we,
so,
so we're passing a resolution to not pursue properties?
Yes,
Yes.
so that it
To not
allows us,
pursue These two lot.
The land bank's not
The
gonna pursue
land
those
bank,
two.
okay,
Those
gotcha.
two.
yeah, and what, it doesn't give me the authority to apply
go
to
after
buy
it.
it
We're just
because
not pursuing.
I still have to get permission from my employer to do that. But my employer doesn't want it, but at the same time, they might change their mind in 6 weeks, something might happen, I don't know. So that's, I think, the point Michelle's making is that you can still adopt a resolution
Right.
here and then address the conflict of interest later, but it doesn't give somebody,
Still-
the authority to go ahead and bid on this next week. And there's no foreclosure list, and these have been on the list forever. There's no rush, and it's just a case study from me particularly to sort of establish that policy.
What is One Robbins Ave? What's that similar to 8? It's just a patch of woods.
There's technically
Landlocked.
a paper road here that they put a basketball court on with a fence, so you can't get through. And this is a big outcrop, so it's like the only way through is to buy that property. So
So all in favor of adopting a resolution to not pursue Robbins Ave and Lincoln Ave?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We move into any old business, Brad?
no,
So the next order of business is WOH is gonna discuss our bylaw changes.
or at least a bird's eye view of it.
Yeah, so high level view, and I think, Brad, if this is something we want to talk about, how we workshop these through after. So we kind of took a look at your bylaws. They were in decent shape. A lot of what we suggest as far as changes is just kind of tightening things up a little bit, bringing them a little bit closer in line with the Land Bank Act, the MPCL, mirroring that language, just so that there's no disconnect. The biggest kind of issue that we saw is the committee structure. And this is super common, especially if an organization hasn't taken a look at their bylaws in a while. There used to be, prior to the Revitalization Act, which went into effect probably phased in between 2017 and 2019, this concept of what you guys have as standing and ad hoc committees. The MPCL, when the revisions went into effect, changed that structure to call them now committees of the board and committees of the corporation. Committees of the board essentially can act in place of the board and bind the organization as if the board took action, whereas committees of the corporation are more advisory. So the way that your bylaws are currently set up with your committees, it would appear that probably your standing committees are committees of the board, whether they should be or you want them to be or not. That's definitely a discussion point. And then, your other committees would be committees of the corporation. Where this gets difficult for an organization like the Land Bank and where it sometimes doesn't quite line up with the MPCL is the OML component. Because technically, if you had a committee as a committee of the board that could take action on its own, then you'd have to conduct those meetings in accordance with OML. So a lot of organizations don't typically have committees of the board for that reason, because they don't want them to be able to bind the organization without a full board vote. But you can make them then committees of the corporation. They still have their advisory role. They just don't have kind
Wait, committees of the corporation is advisory and board
of board
is
is binding.
Authority, yeah.
B and B.
Yeah.
Right. Because I
Board is
heard that
binding.
differently
Nope.
in the first round.
Board is binding. So that's kind of the one construct that probably needs the most work and kind of thought within the draft. I would say a lot of the other changes are just, some suggestions on like language changes, clarification on different things, better aligning with the statute. And then we always say, this is also a good time to kind of look at your committees and your descriptions to say like, okay, here's what it says this committee does. Is that what it's really doing? Is it doing other things that we want to put in there? Do we have any other committees that maybe aren't in the bylaws that we want reflected in the bylaws? To kind of take this time while kind of you've got this document open to look at that as well.
So when we're talking about committees of the board, so where I'm at right now, like our governance committee and our audit and finance committee is actually a committee of the whole board.
Okay.
Right, like the
Yeah.
whole board is the committee,
Is on the
right? So is that something like, and I'm not saying A and D, because I think A and D is something special. I actually think A and D could be a committee of the corporation. It would streamline the process. We'd be very strategic in planning, but it would require a plan, right? You'd have to be able to have an actual plan for the land bank so that committee could.
You want it to be a committee of the board, so it can bind things.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
B and B, Ron, B and
Yeah,
B.
maybe.
Can
But I guess
I real quickly say, doesn't the Land Bank Act specify that certain transactions
Yes.
have to be done by a
Correct.
majority vote of the
That's-
board?
That's where, that is where A and D would fall down a bit, because technically the acquisition,
That would have,
and disposition of property can't go to,
But it could be a, like those, so I guess my question is like governance and audit and committee, audit and finance, we're running into this in March, right? And instead of having a 4-person meeting on a Tuesday and then turn around and have a board meeting the next Wednesday of the whole board and have people present twice and do those kinds of things, you could literally, I mean, we're rolling maybe this time with, just a finance committee in the beginning, right, of the meeting.
Mhm.
Is there a way for to change the structure of the committees to be like a committee of the whole board?
you could, but then you also, what's the point of the committee? Yeah,
Don't get me
so.
wrong, like, what's the point of some of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, but,
Yeah.
at the same time.
So I think the other tension we sometimes see too is that if your committee is so large that you actually have a quorum of the board on the committee, then it's actually just a board meeting, and then you have to comply with OML.
When you say that, I think we're already doing
we
that
already,
with all our
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah.
Like we live stream all our
You live-
committees
okay.
and we notice them all and that sort
Yeah.
of stuff.
It's like our city council chooses to have, technically the charter says legislation has to move through committees. Well, it's been long-standing, everybody knows is that it goes through finance because that's the whole entire council.
Right.
So it's kind of two birds, one stone. Yes, it's duplicated, but I guess to what I think Monica's point is that something with finance, I guess, I think this was your point, but with A and D, there might be a little bit more of like the group really diving in and doing a little more research where frankly, when we're getting an audit review or
Yeah.
those types of things, it's all of us maybe having a question, so instead of it being duplicated, the members aren't really diving into do research on the audit, for example. We're just kind of, doing our oversight obligation compared to a committee like A and D that, probably does dive into a little bit more. And
Yeah.
it might make sense that you know, even if it was when we pull, you know, Bonadio or whoever in here to go over our audit, that, you know, maybe even if that's a finance committee meeting that the whole board is part of, and then even if you have to satisfy that and do 2 votes on it or something, but at least from an efficient standpoint, you're kind of clearing it out in one meeting. I think that's.
Which is what we're planning to do in other business down below. If you see that. We're doing-
Yeah, I mean, I think you can certainly take it, one of two ways, you know, some organizations say, all right, let's just put everyone on every committee and then, you know, it's kind of all covered.
I don't,
Or go smaller so it can be more like how A&D really digs into their issues. You then maybe have audit also has this, you guys are all independent, so it probably doesn't matter, but audit, you also can only have independent directors on the audit committee. But some organizations also take the tact of going, all right, let's keep the committees smaller and then maybe have people on fewer committees so that they can really dig into their assignment. It kind of depends on which direction you want to go in.
The question about the A&D, in diving deep into what we do, but we're non-binding anyway, that sounds like it might be a committee of the corporation in terms of when you're negotiating, you're talking about numbers, at least it's not live streamed for anybody to just go watch.
Exactly.
So switching that to the opposite of non-binding the board
Correct.
will allow us to not have to live stream it or keep the door unlocked.
Yeah. Now,
whether or not A&D is the committee of the board or committee of
Corporation.
it does not have the authority to bind the document, correct? Is that how I understood what you said? We don't have the binding authority to just push something through without going to the full board.
correct.
Only
A&D
because
would
it says
not.
it in the bylaws, and didn't we early on kind of establish the authority that we were gonna get Brad to negotiate, so it wasn't you're convening an A&D committee every time someone does a back and forth off, which again, as the executive director, that's the day-to-day person, should have that ability.
Which ironically, your bylaws don't actually even mention the A&D committee.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that may be one we want to add in
Okay.
when we're talking about committees that maybe need to be listed versus
And
not
if that's
listed.
a committee of the corporation, it does not have to be live streamed.
Correct. Because it can't make
No, I mean, just to throw out, I go back to that other example, I mean, maybe just for efficiency, you do consider some of the more finance stuff, the audit committees, our committee of a board. It would be more efficient for everybody. Probably, again, we're just doing our diligence and oversight of a review where some of these other committees like an A&D. And to Brad's point, there's the benefit of being able to have a different type of discussion in those committees to then bring it to the full board. In my opinion.
I think we have to do whatever work we can to maximize the amount of value out of these meetings, but also take into consideration the fact that this is a small board. You know, I mean, like how many? What's the minimum amount of people on a committee?
3.
We've already got, we've got 1/3 of our board. That we have to try and figure out the best way to move forward that makes the most amount of sense, doesn't waste time,
Mhm.
and maximizes output or efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to that point, just about the size of the board, we're currently at 11, which means quorum, or to do any of the items in the land bank law, that's the special 6, I think there are. We need 6 votes of total board membership, but we consistently don't have the 2 school board appointees. I don't know if we can change that ourselves or we need the city council to change the charter. What's your thoughts?
Probably would need to talk to city council because it's in your enabling legislation.
Yes,
that The
yep.
school board gets to appoint 2 people, so
They're aware of it a little bit. at
yeah,
least.
like as much as, you know, theoretically the board could amend the certificate itself. I think because you are created by the city,
Mhm.
as much as you have your, certificate filed, they would need to weigh in on that change.
So do
Would be a
we
good
make
faith
those
gesture
changes
anyway.
and then present those changes to the city council?
I mean, I think it realistically, yes, you would make the proposal and then once you have the approval, we can go in and amend the certificate to
Sure.
actually take them out.
Not to get into this again, because I know it came up before, but is it just historically the reps from the school districts never come.
So John Carmelo was super involved all
In
the
the
way up
beginning,
until
yeah.
some challenges.
Yeah.
And then the original woman from Lansingburg, which I can't remember her name.
Me either.
Tiffany.
Saw her 3 times.
Oh, I know. She was like hit or miss, and I would call her and she'd show up, and then she would miss a couple more. But remember, she straddled between Utica and here. Like it was weird. Like she lived in Utica, but she was here when she was here. It was weird.
Jeez.
I'm
mad I got 5 minutes from Third Street. I don't know how to do
So
that.
I know. So I think it's the whole, and again, going back to the why, right? Why did we put them on there was because, you know, obviously the school districts are affected by vacant buildings. The city is affected by vacant buildings. We were trying to do that law where we could grab the 5% for 5 years. What was the
50% for
50% for 5 years? So that had to go through in order to be like beneficial, really, right? Because the city taxes are just such a fraction of our overall tax base, right? The school tax is the largest piece, so you wanted to get the school boards intact. So at least you were getting a little over 60% or 65%, and then the county was a whole different egg.
Mhm.
Like that was a whole different being. You know, so at least if you could save 65% for a homeowner, right? And that 65% was coming back to, but I mean, not save, but the 65% was coming back to the land bank. It was another avenue of funding. So that has really never been done in New York State, I don't believe. That was the only reason they were added to the board, because we wanted them to have visibility like the IDA has and the LDC has. So I don't know if the city council will turn around and say, hey, we want 2 of our own representatives.
Well, that was my next question, is the move to eliminate those
Don't
or
say
just
that out
replace
loud.
them? Because I do believe many hands do light work. I think there are some boards that get too big, but I also do think there could be value in us having 2 actual active.
2 more mayoral appointments.
Hey,
We'll let you guys do that.
So the Land Bank Act actually said it has to be an odd number.
Right.
So either you're going down
to 9.
to 9 or staying at 11.
I agree with Brian. It's nice to have a board, because especially if it's hard to have to take a day, right? If we're now.
I feel bad when I can't be there, but
Right.
life happens. So
Right.
Mhm.
But I think that there's also this possibility in knowing our community that there might be a push to try to get some additional influence on the board, or representation on the board is probably a better word, which that's fine.
But-
Whatever,
but
the more the merrier.
the school angle clearly isn't working.
Mhm.
It could. We could be
Yeah.
pioneers. We could.
Well,
No, I know. I'm saying
Google-
but we've tried. We've actually done
Yeah.
an outreach and no one's
Right.
here. So
Well,
right.
that's
I've tried.
not working.
So do we always just go back in history? Has the outreach always been to the superintendent's office, or is it through the school board? Because I would just imagine you possibly have someone on the school board maybe more interested than someone out of the superintendent's office or the administration part.
So Lansingburg
But I could be wrong.
I reached out to both. The president, the superintendent teetered between appointing one was Henkel's wife from the school board,
Andrea, yeah, she's the
Andrea,
school board president.
or he went back and forth about another person in his office who was more in charge of finances.
Mhm.
Carmelo, I talked to the most about it. I'll just say he was not interested.
Yeah.
Without being specific. I don't want to speak for John. He just wasn't interested.
Who does the land bank bylaws, do they state, or I guess really would be whatever's written in our charter, but it's probably in there too, but is it the school board that appoints the person, or is it the superintendent?
Believe it's the superintendent.
Well, maybe
I think
that's
the
the
school district can appoint whomever they want.
If you have a school,
It's
just thrown out, I think if you have a school board that knows they have an appointment to another board, you'd probably they're already doing, they're
That's
on
what
a
I
board
asked
for free
Carmelo.
already, they're doing stuff, they're active, where the superintendents clearly don't see value in it. Obviously something out there.
It's not even that specific. It's just 2 directors shall be appointed by the school districts in the city of Troy.
Huh.
1 representative from each.
I had high hopes that they were all gonna merge at one point in time in life.
Good luck. No one goes up there to feed them.
Seamus, that was the approach, was just to get an appointment, rather than recreating the wheel. It doesn't have to be either superintendent. It doesn't even have to be someone that works at the school. It could be someone from
That's-
those.
From the
That's what
Community.
I
From
almost
the
think that we
district.
put it on both school boards because I would just think that they would convene and most likely appoint one of their members that again, they obviously have track records of being part of an important volunteer board. The school board is, you know, you don't get paid for that. You obviously have an interest in the community there. I don't know how much each board has, but I think those both boards, and there's
School
what,
boards, yeah.
6, 8 members. I don't know, but just a thought, you know, because like you going to Andrea Ferris, I could see her being interested in this. That's why that's one of the people I thought in my mind that, I mean, she's pretty much anytime you ask her to do anything, she kind of jumps on it. She might not want me to say that out loud, but
That was one of the suggestions
public
that came from Lansing.
Yeah.
That was one of,
Yeah.
one of 2 people.
Well, why don't we reapproach the school board?
like send a letter
Maybe
to
we go
each
to the school board this
pre- send a
right?
letter or reach out to
didn't
each
do that.
school board president. What's
Let's
Troy's
just-
Ann Rounds, I think, right? Yeah.
Donnie Miller, yeah.
Is it?
I mean, you can literally just go to one of the meetings. I mean, I'm sure they have like an open session. Sometimes mail gets lost.
Oh, I can pick up. I mean, does someone want to pick? I have no problem calling, but if somebody else wants to,
You call Angie, I'll call Donnie. How's that?
That's fair. I like that.
You see
Actually,
that?
that's what I was going to ask. Tell Don I said hi.
Do we need any more votes?
I like this.
No, I think,
The last thing was just talking about
And I
audit and
trust you all for
governance
that.
committee.
executive.
and then executive session said close.
Okay.
Shut down the camera so we can discuss the
So you
price.
got the price, yes.
So we'll have I don't think we need to reconvene, right? So, we'll close it.
Just someone make a motion. to go
So,
into
yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
No, to go into executive session.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
I